Well, hey everyone, this is Chris DiFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by the ground control Cyclops brewer from Voga Coffee. Using their SCA award-winning technology, they can deliver unheard of precision and control over a range of flavors that previously you couldn't even get from your coffee. This machine not only makes batch brew coffee perfection, but also tea, batched iced lattes, and batch cold brew. It's got a small footprint. It's easy to use and train your staff on. To learn more about it, go to groundcontrol.coffee. So if you're wanting quality, precision, versatility, and to provide your guests with a truly next-level coffee experience, then you need to get the Ground Control Cyclops brewer for your cafe. Again, go find out more information at groundcontrol.coffee. This episode is also brought to you by La Marzocco, who has been making espresso machines by hand in Florence since 1927, and they are the global standard for excellence, dependability, and innovation. It's no wonder that La Marzocco is at the heart of so many of the world's best coffee shops and cafes. The machines like the KB90 that introduced straight-in locking portafilters for ergonomics, auto flush for cleanliness, and built-in scales for precision. This, among many other machines that La Marzocco offers, continues the tradition of innovation that makes coffee shops thrive and makes professionals trust La Marzocco. La Marzocco USA is available to help you find the right machine for your shop. All you need to do is reach out to one of their friendly salespeople by emailing info@lamarzocousa.com and also check them out over at their website, lamarzocousa.com. Okay, everyone. Well, today I wanted to dive into a subject that I hear often from trainers and owners when it comes to the type of equipment that they get for their shop. Usually they're thinking about whether or not to get equipment that is automatic, semi-automatic, fully manual. And the thought behind whether or not to do that rests usually on the idea that they need to guard against a certain kind of default that baristas have. So on one side, you've got people who want automation because for them, that means that the barista doesn't have to think as much. And then there's other people who, on the other side, who want as much a manual process as possible because it forces the barista to think more. Both of these are incorrect, in my opinion, because what they leave out is that what happens in the cafe as a matter of practice is cultivated and not imported. If you think that a machine, whether manual or automatic, is going to have that big of an influence on the motivations and behaviors on a group of people under pressure, that's a pretty amazing piece of equipment. That's the kind of thing that, turns people into Captain America type of equipment. You know what I mean? No piece of equipment can really do that. What can do that is culture. And so when we think about what kind of equipment we should be getting, the first thing that we need to think about is, why am I putting so much stock in the promises of this equipment to kind of take my place as the trainer or as the influencer in the store? In my experience, if there is not a culture of excellence, a cultivated mindfulness about quality that's baked into the business, it doesn't matter what kind of automations you have. It doesn't matter what kind of manual expectations you have. People will find a way to just plug and play whatever it is they're doing behind the bar without the central component of culture. This is just natural human instinct. This is not specific to baristas. Baristas are just human beings, right? And so even if you're using the most automatic of espresso machines, you can make great coffee on a super automatic if you really finesse it the right way. Or you can make great coffee on a lever espresso machine from ancient days if you finesse it the right way. That is a big if. And it doesn't fall onto the equipment manufacturers to automate that part. That's up to you. And we can't be chasing something that allows us to skip that. There's nothing that's going to ever be invented that allows us to skip that. Even with the kind of things that we have right now, just think about the sheer amount of energy and the work it's taken to innovate espresso and brewing and preparation equipment to the point where we are today. And then contrast that to the amount of energy that is spent building cultures of quality and excellence to use those pieces of equipment well. We place far more of an expectation on manufacturers to do an excellent job with their equipment than we put on ourselves to provide an environment where people use that equipment with excellence. And so what we end up doing is we keep chasing the next innovation, the next innovation. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is it. And all the while, frankly, we are it. We tend to be the biggest equipment malfunction there is in the coffee shop. This was one of those old sayings that people had back in the day. I think it was like Mark Prince put out there of coffeegeek.com, where he said, a good barista should be able to make great coffee on any espresso machine. Now, that's a little extreme, I think. But the point he was making there, I think, is a really valid one, which is we do tend to blame the equipment a lot for the things that go wrong on the bar, because we have this instinct that tells us if we blame ourselves, we're either going to do something about it and take a lot of time and money to do it, or we're going to ignore it. And so it's easier to simply pass the buck on down the line and say, this is the equipment's fault, when all the while we could eliminate much of the kind of inconsistencies and troubles that we have by just creating more specific expectations and resourcing people well enough to use the equipment mindfully. Now think about this. Our devotion to the idea that we have to purchase equipment that unlocks our ability to be consistent and not really look at ourselves and our own mindfulness as a catalyst for that is something that's also passed down to the customer. Because we kind of skip ourselves in the equation, we then end up with customers who are basically guinea pigs for whatever arrangement of equipment we tend to put into our cafes. By under-preparing our staff and over-focusing on equipment, the customer ends up seeing lots of cool, shiny things, but the coffee goes up and down and this way and that. And of course, that can be very frustrating. But if you take the time to get a deep knowledge of your equipment and use it to its maximum potential and really train your staff to be expert at it without the excuse of, well, they're just new baristas and they can't be expected to know A, B, and C. I think sometimes in a bid to get people up to speed quickly, we do tend to oversimplify. And I'm a big advocate of keeping things basic and simple right from the beginning. But like dialing in espresso, for example, is a basic skill. It is not an advanced skill. It is a basic skill. And it's something that should be taught right away to baristas that are expected to actually work on the espresso bar. Knowledge of the equipment is also one of those basic skills that should be taught at least within the first 6 months of a barista being on the machine and working, representing your coffee to your community. There's a lot on the line here. And if we're not willing to spend equal amounts of time and money on training our people in the shop as we are on the actual equipment itself, then it's always going to be a lopsided equation where we're going to be passing the buck to the equipment and underinvesting in people. And so if we can just equalize that a little bit, or even err on the side of people a little bit more often as the key to this whole thing, as really the linchpin that holds the whole thing together, then I think we are going to be better off. The rules, recipes, and equipment we get will not, by osmosis, create consistency. This is an active process that happens over time, that develops momentum, that builds culture, and builds people, and that will deliver excellence every single time, way more often than any machine can do on its own. So I hope that this was a helpful episode for you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me, and I'll see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break. from keys to the shop.